the air tonight with investigators getting their hands on a key piece of evidence that may help explain why that Boeing plane got a hole blown in it midair. Tonight, the new big clue on what could have happened, how to make sure that that never happens again, and what this means for some of the country's biggest airlines, with new moves on that front late today. Then new details from the White House, where it sounds like the president's not planning to fire his defense secretary anytime soon. But that's hardly satisfying critics who wonder, why in the world did almost nobody know Lloyd Austin was in the ICU for 3 days? The intense scrutiny and who could be held accountable coming up. Plus, tornadoes touching down in Texas. The storm now headed toward our reporting team in Alabama. They're going to tell us how folks are getting ready there. Plus, the full forecast on what you can expect with nearly everybody in this country affected by this series of storms. And everything you've ever wanted to know, but we're afraid to ask about the Iowa caucuses in our breakdown. Hey there, I'm Hallie. And tonight, in just the last hour, United Airlines says it found loose bolts on multiple door plugs of Boeing 737 MAX 9s. What's a door plug? That's the thing that blew off that Alaska Airlines flight Friday in midair, like 10 minutes after it took off from Portland. Remember, the plane started shaking, oxygen masks dropped, the lights went out. Now, all of those kinds of planes are getting inspected before they can go back in the air. You're seeing the video here. Those are NTSB investigators. Those images just released in the last couple of hours. The teams were collecting that door plug, and this is the flight here, in the backyard of a teacher named Bob. That's where they found this piece of plane. That's pretty much all they're saying so far on that front, with some big questions tonight and no answers yet, including, importantly, could this issue with the loose bolts that United is talking about, could that be the answer to this door plug hole mystery? Why wasn't that Alaska Airlines plane inspected earlier after multiple warning lights apparently went off because of issues with air pressurization? Those warning lights may have been unrelated, maybe not, TBD. And then, is what happened on this Alaska flight, the one we're talking about, is that part of a broader issue with this plane that the airline was flying, the Boeing 737 MAX 9? It's that last question that's affecting air travel on a much bigger level tonight, after the FAA grounded all of these kinds of planes until airlines inspect them starting today. Right now, as we speak, something like 150-plus Alaska flights have gotten canceled. United also uses these planes. That number is over 230. If you're like, hey, why aren't the other airlines on there, Delta, Southwest, whatever, they don't really fly as many of these planes, if at all. Now, the airports getting hit the hardest, you can see them here, unsurprisingly, airports that have a lot of United and Alaska flights. Seattle, Denver, Chicago, Newark. Both of these airlines say that people with tickets for these kinds of flights would be rerouted. Tom Costello is joining us now. Okay, so Tom, let's start with these loose bolts, right? How big of a deal is this if we're seeing multiple planes with this issue?
It could be. And, oh, by the way, it is important to stress that only Alaska and United fly the MAX 9. So that's why we're only hearing from them. But United is saying that when they did a preliminary look at their door plugs on Saturday, they started seeing loose bolts. The formal work that the FAA is requiring from both Alaska and United to fully inspect their door plugs for any issues, that hasn't even started yet. Should start today.
There was this question we mentioned at the top there about some of those depressurization alerts on this Alaska Airlines flight. It wasn't able to actually fly over water. So then I think people might think, okay, well, then how is it allowed to fly over land? How should we be thinking about those alerts? Could it be related? Could it not? Help us understand it.
I think this is a critical question. I've asked the NTSB chair this question. It's going to come up again this evening during her news conference. What we know is that this same plane, pilots who have flown the same plane, and by the way, it was a new plane, right? They only got it like on Halloween Day. That same plane, 3 previous crews had these warnings go off in the cockpit of pressurization issues, 3 separate occasions, once in December, twice in January. And that was before then, Friday night's very serious incident over Portland. And so the NTSB is asking more information from Alaska Air. Alaska says its answer was to restrict the plane, no flying over water, no going to Hawaii until they track down those warning lights to find out if that was something serious or not. In the meantime, something else, Hallie, that is that the cockpit voice recorder, which is one of the black boxes, was recorded over. In other words, there's only a 2-hour recording loop on that black box. And if you don't pull the circuit breaker to stop the recording, it will keep recording over. Therefore, they don't have the recording of what these pilots were saying to each other, capturing all the sound in the cockpit when this emergency was happening. The NTSB chief addressed that earlier in a news conference.
If that communication is not recorded, that is Unfortunately, a loss for us, and a loss for FAA, and a loss for safety, because that information is key, not just for our investigation, but for improving aviation safety.
Yeah, that black box records not the radio comms, but the communication, the talk between the pilots, and then capturing all the sound, the ambient sound in that cockpit, the air rushing, the computers dinging, all the warnings going off. They don't have it.
There's also this now kind of key piece of evidence that they picked up. I mean, imagine you're sitting at home and you're a teacher, and then all of a sudden in your backyard, here comes a piece of a plane that has fallen out of the sky. I mean, that's what happened to somebody in the Oregon area here. That's a critical thing that they now have their hands on. Talk to us about what that investigation looks like, how important that is, this inspection process that's happening, as you've alluded to here. As we show, I know we have some more of those pictures, too, of the NTSB investigators that were just getting into us, getting a look at that door plug. That
door is already on its way to the NTSB lab here in Washington. They will look at every centimeter of that door, the door plug, I should say, for any signs of stress, the bolts, all of the pins. They want to know why did that fail.
Yeah. Any sense that you're getting from the sources you're talking to, Tom, on timeline for something like this story that's captured just so many people around the country thinking,
I think it's changed in the last few minutes, Hallie. I really do. I mean, we had thought that maybe this is a one-off, just one incident involving this single plane. But now with United reporting loose bolts, we thought maybe this would extend for a few days and then they'd clear all the planes to fly. And now I'm not so sure. We may now have a bigger, broader, deeper problem with the MAX 9. The question is, you know, what about the Boeing culture that seems to keep having issues? That's far bigger than just this one plane.
For people set to travel on either of these airlines anytime soon, how should they be thinking about this? Are there other planes that these airlines have in stock that they can kind of launch here, and if they're not going to fly the MAX 9s?
Yes, so both United and Alaska are trying to fill the flights they've canceled because they can't use the MAX 9. They're using other planes, right? Not all 737s are the same. The MAX 9 is all we're talking about here. We're not talking about the MAX 7, the MAX 8, Airbus planes, etc. They will try to use those planes as much as possible. They're not going to fly the MAX 9. That plane is grounded right now by the FAA.
Tom Costello, we're so glad to have you on this story that just continues to unfold almost hour by hour. Thank you so much. Let's take you to another story that is unfolding late tonight, and that is out of the Pentagon here, saying it's looking into whether anybody broke any laws after the defense secretary and senior leaders waited multiple days, 3 days, to tell the White House that Lloyd Austin was in the ICU. Secretary Austin is still in the hospital. He's at Walter Reed, but he says he's recovering after what the Pentagon describes as an elective procedure a couple days before Christmas. He was in, then out after just a night. Fine. New Year's Day, though, he's got a lot of pain, the Pentagon says, really bad pain. He goes back to the hospital, admitted to the ICU. Now, his deputy secretary assumed some of his duties the next day. By the way, she was on vacation in Puerto Rico. She didn't even know why. She didn't know her boss was in the hospital until January 4th. The same day some top White House officials find out. Courtney Kube is joining us now. So today was supposed to be kind of maybe an answer day. Maybe we'd get some answers from the Pentagon on this, right? With some discussions on this. We do know that the Pentagon spokesperson says they're going to see were any laws broken because there is a reporting procedure that presumably needs to be followed here. Are the answers satisfying lawmakers, national security experts, and others who say this should totally not have happened?
So it really depends on who it is, right? So we've just moments ago heard from Senator Wicker, a Republican, saying there needs to be open hearings about this. Senator Cotton, Republican, calling on Secretary Austin to resign over this. So there are Republicans on the Hill who are definitely very critical. Some Democrats haven't been quite as critical, but there's no question about at this point, Hallie, is yes, we have gotten some more answers today, but I gotta say they're just opening up even more questions. So we saw the timeline that you put up on that screen. What we've learned even a little bit more since then was that on January 2nd, so the day after Secretary Austin was admitted to the hospital, his chief of staff and his senior military aide were both notified that he had been hospitalized. Now, that was also the day that, according to the press secretary here, Pat Ryder, Major General Pat Ryder, his condition worsened to the point where he had to give over or hand over some of his responsibilities and authorities to his deputy secretary, Kathleen Hicks. As you mentioned, she was not notified why. She was just told, you're taking over some of the boss's job here. She was on vacation at the time. She wasn't told until 48 hours later. But I gotta say, now knowing that some of those senior officials here were notified on Tuesday, and yet it still took 48 more hours for them to notify the White House really opens up more questions, including at what you mentioned, which is the reporting procedures here. Are there statutory requirements that require Pentagon leaders to notify the White House of the secretary's whereabouts and health at all times? And those are some of the questions that the general counsel's office here in the Pentagon are asking and looking into tonight, Hallie.
I believe that Pat Ryder Court was, based on your reporting, one of the people who was told on January 2nd, right?
Correct. He and the head of public affairs here.
Because he's somebody who has to take questions from people like you who are like trying to get some answers here. And it sounds like he wouldn't say whether he was told not to say anything when he first found out.
Yes, we don't know if there was actually some direction not to inform the public, the press, other officials here in the building. Critically, we found out today, Hallie, that the service secretaries, the Secretary of the Army, Secretary of the Navy, they weren't notified until Friday afternoon, right before that statement came out. Also, the members of the Joint Chiefs, they were not notified. The chairman was on Tuesday. The other chiefs were not until Friday. So, as I said, a lot more questions about who should have been telling people the status of the Secretary of Defense and whether any laws may have been broken in the way this all unfolded.
You know, I've been having some conversations with folks around this too, but just help put this in a macro. Step back, right, 30,000 feet. Is this normal?
No, no, it's not. I've been covering secretaries of defense since Donald Rumsfeld, and I can tell you we have had other instances where the secretary has undergone a medical procedure. I mean, frankly, look at what we just had. We had the Commandant of the Marine Corps had a massive heart attack, came close to dying, frankly, and the Marine Corps was very transparent about the whole procedure. Frankly, the exact opposite of what we've encountered here.
For people who are saying, well, wait a second, shouldn't somebody be allowed to go have a medical procedure and keep it private? Explain why it's different when you're the defense secretary.
Yes, and he had this elective medical procedure. The difference here is he was sent to the ICU on Monday. He is in the military chain of command. He's in the nuclear chain of command. So that means that he's part of the president's very critical national security council or staff. If there is, heaven forbid, an attack on the United States, there are a group of people who get together on a phone call who decide on options. Sometimes they literally have minutes to make those decisions. He's one of those people. They need to know where he is and how to get in touch with them at a moment's notice all the time.
Courtney Kuby live for us there at the Pentagon Court. Thank you so much. A lot of developments on this, and I'll be checking back in with you throughout the evening. Appreciate it. Right now, let's take you to weather because we've got at least 2 confirmed tornadoes we've just learned touching down in southeast Texas. You've got a lot of tornado watches in that area now being issued in this storm that's now on the move. It is on the ground heading toward Alabama with emergency managers, by the way, across 40 states. So probably, just based on numbers, the state that you live in, getting ready for what's described as ferocious blizzard conditions or a messy mix, leaving millions of people under some kind of alert. Blizzard, wind, flood through at least tomorrow. Some governors are already declaring states of emergency. We are already seeing delays at some airports. Schools, campuses closed. Look at this, some problems with visibility on the road. And then guess what's on the heels of this mess? The potential for flash flooding. Forecasters say that is pretty likely. We've got our team all over this for you. Marissa Parr, who's on the ground for us in Alabama, and meteorologist Bill Cairns, who's standing by. Marissa, I'm going to throw a curveball, if you don't mind. I just ask you to stand by for 1 second, because when tornadoes are on the ground, Bill Cairns, that is a concern always for life and safety. Is that still an active situation in southern Texas?
Yes, we have 2, actually, one in Louisiana and one in areas of just outside of Houston. So this is our tornado watch until 9 p.m., and we're tracking this one. So over by Morgan City, just outside of there, heading towards Reserve. This is an active tornado warning. This should be heading up towards Laplace. Again, this is radar confirmed. No one has actually spotted it on the ground, but conditions are favorable when this moves through in the next 20 minutes. And then we'll jump over towards, here's downtown Houston. This is that thunderstorm that's approaching. This is also a radar-indicated tornado. So, Hallie, we have active tornado warnings. We don't have any confirmation that they're on the ground. Of course, when we get that information, I'll pass it back to you.
Bill, thank you. Stand by. Marissa, to you now, because, hey, if we're talking about folks, Marissa, who are in the south, who are in the path of the storm, you and our team are one of them. What are you hearing from people about how they're getting ready, and what are you seeing tonight?
Well, what I can tell you is that what we're learning in terms of how people are getting ready, Hallie, it's not very visual. I've covered tornado threats before, and it's not like a hurricane where you can see lines of people gathering sandbags and boarding up their windows. It's not like a snowstorm where you see people lining up to get their snow shovels and stocking up on supplies. I mean, tornado threats, this area is no stranger to tornado threats. And so when I've been speaking to people about it, it's not one of those things where it's on everyone's mind. However, we are seeing precautions being taken. and not just here in Mobile, across the area. We know that there's a lot of schools, not just K through 12, but also colleges that have closed early, either today or protectively tomorrow, between LSU and the Florida Panhandle. We're even seeing local governments doing the same. We saw this in New Orleans, and I also just learned that the same is true here in Mobile. In fact, the coffee shop I was at just 2 hours ago, the people inside told me they had no idea a storm was coming. And then they just texted me a few minutes ago to say that they're actually closing early because of the threat. They want to make sure they have a chance to get home safely and take shelter should that be the case. So, Hallie, this is the difficult part about these types of threats. It's not something that people can necessarily prepare for, other than being ready to take shelter if this strikes. When it does, which people can only hope is when it's still light outside and you're able to see it before they're asleep, of course.
That's such a good and important point. Marissa Parr, thank you so much for being live for us there. I appreciate it. Bill, back to you now on the forecast, because this is one every corner of the country, almost, like everybody's in for something here.
Yeah, I put this equivalent to like 2 hurricanes making landfall in the same area in like 4 days. We're going to have 2 major blizzards that are going to impact, as you said, just almost everyone. So this is the winter alerts. Obviously, the tornado threat is life-threatening, but the blizzard portion of the storm is life-threatening right now. We know in the western panhandle of Oklahoma, in one county, all of the roads are closed. There are motorists that are stranded. They're saying they can't even get to them because the blizzard conditions are so brutal. So there's people in their cars, hoping that their gas doesn't run out and their heat doesn't run out, and they get found eventually tonight or tomorrow morning. So that's happening now in this blizzard. This is Storm 2, by the way. I've actually been calling these Storm 2 and 3 because the one in the Northeast was Storm 1, just for clarity issues, because this is so much going on. This is the snowfall we're expecting as we go throughout Storm 2. This is the one that's currently producing the tornadoes. So from Kansas City, eastern Iowa, southern portion of Wisconsin. You notice how huge that storm is also in the west. That's Storm 3. And then the other life-threatening portion, this will be later tonight when the heavy rain comes through southern Mississippi and Louisiana. Flash flooding is possible. And then tomorrow up the East Coast. And then late Tuesday night, that's the possibility of extreme flooding. A lot of river and coastal flooding in the Northeast. And Hallie, one thing that's going to impact so many people is the high winds with this. I would guess, when I talk to you tomorrow at this point, we'll have well over 1 million people without power on the East Coast, maybe higher than that. Right now, the number is approaching 100,000 in Texas and areas of Oklahoma.
Oof, you hate to hear even those kinds of predictions. Bill Carrots, thank you very much. We're going to be checking back in with you, I know, as the system continues to develop. Appreciate it. President Biden late today says he is still asking Israel to scale back its invasion inside Gaza in a moment of tension on the campaign trail, with pro-Palestinian demonstrators interrupting a speech he was giving in South Carolina. This is just happening this afternoon. Watch.
I've been quietly working with the Israeli government to get them to reduce and significantly get out of Gaza.
So you heard those protesters chanting ceasefire now, as the president is essentially saying that they are working with Israel to try to get them to a more targeted campaign. The timing here, it's interesting. It's notable because a top Israeli military leader is now telling the New York Times that the Israeli military is starting to do exactly that. Pull out more troops, launch fewer airstrikes. Again, still a targeted operation inside Gaza. With the Secretary of State in the region, he's on this pretty high-stakes tour of the Middle East. And the Arab leaders that Tony Blinken's meeting with are giving him a new warning, saying that there is more and more anti-U.S. sentiment, with people blaming the United States in their country, along with Israel, for the number of civilians who have been killed inside Gaza. This is according to multiple senior administration officials, diplomatic sources, and congressional officials. All of it, right, with the tensions in the region ratcheting up because a top commander of Hezbollah was just killed in a strike in southern Lebanon. The Iranian-backed militant group says the latest and one of the most significant escalations between Hezbollah and Israel since the war started. Let's bring in Keir Simmons, who's on the ground in Doha, Qatar, for us tonight. So, Keir, a couple of buckets here, right? Bucket number one, the idea, and as you heard President Biden allude to today in this kind of, it seemed, impromptu moment, saying we have quietly been having these conversations. NBC News has been reporting the same for several weeks now, this idea that Israel should, the U.S. hopes, move to a more targeted approach here in order to try to minimize the number of civilian deaths in Gaza. Where does that stand?
Well, Hallie, Israel says it's moving to a new phase. Honestly, I think the Palestinians will want to wait to see what that really means. If it really means that truly on the ground they are making some concessions to what the US has been asking for. The World Health Organization using the word sickening to describe scenes in some hospitals in Gaza. Secretary Blinken has left the Gulf now, heading to Israel with what he says is a 4-point peace plan. And Hallie, we interviewed a Hamas official here in Qatar today who told us that Hamas is talking to the Qataris about what some kind of a plan for the future might look like, despite the fact that they rejected an offer from the Egyptians. Take a listen.
It should lead to a final comprehensive ceasefire. It should include an exchange, a deal of prisoner deal. It should include opening the borders and allowing all the aid to come into Gaza, to allow the people from the south to move to the north, and finally to initiate a political process so that we can finally end or get rid of the occupation and have our own independent state. This is our response to the Egyptians.
You won't release, for example, any more hostages, which include women and young women, older people, unless there is a complete ceasefire.
Practically, it is impossible to seek or to search for any hostages or any prisoners or captured soldiers while they are bombarding everywhere.
Now, of course, Hallie, the Israelis and the Americans would say after the slaughter of October 7th, Hamas can't be part of any kind of deal. And there are those who suggest that they are holding hostages in order to protect themselves, the Hamas leadership. So that's what the Israelis would say. There's a huge divide that you'd have to try to overcome to get a deal at this stage.
Can you also help us understand how we should be thinking about the Secretary of State's trip here? Because he has been to the region, obviously, several times before since this Israel-Hamas war began after that attack on October 7th here. What feels different now? What's your sense of the diplomacy here?
Well, diplomats tell me that privately, Secretary Blinken is more critical of Israel than he is in public. Certainly, we've been talking about, right, Hallie, that, that America has become more critical of Israel over time. The sentiment in Israel is still very strongly that something has to be done after October 7th. Now, there is this idea that Secretary Blinken appears to have of a coalition of Arab states and Turkey, the UAE, Qatar here, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, that might be able to come along and help with some kind of a reconstruction and some kind of a deal. But it's said very widely that those countries wouldn't want to kind of pick up the pieces for Israel without some kind of idea of what it all looks like. And I've got to tell you, just to finish, Ali, the diplomats that I talk to in the region, Arab diplomats, say, listen, we don't really want to talk about the day after until there's a ceasefire.
Keir Simmons live for us there in Doha. Keir, again, a lot of moving pieces tonight. Appreciate it. Let's take you back here at home to New York, where prosecutors today says the NRA let Wayne Lapierre operate the NRA as, in their words, Wayne's World for decades. That's during opening statements in a civil corruption trial against the longtime leader of the National Rifle Association. The New York Attorney General says during Lapierre's leadership, he violated laws governing nonprofits, alleging he misused millions of dollars from the NRA on stuff like salaries that were inflated, personal vacations, designer clothes. Lapierre, of course, no longer leads that organization. He resigned, announced that resignation effective January 31st. So just a couple more weeks left in his tenure. Kendelanian is joining us now. Listen, this is a high-profile trial with a lot at stake, Ken. So walk us through how it is beginning today with this opening arguments and expectations for a pretty long and interesting list of witnesses, including the former NRA president, Oliver North.
Yeah, absolutely. So Wayne Lapierre, who resigned on the eve of this trial, built the NRA over the last 30-plus years into a lobbying colossus that struck fear in the hearts of politicians and set the agenda for gun policy in the United States. Since this scandal broke, the NRA is a much diminished organization, but it's still run by his lieutenants. And what the Attorney General is saying is that these people broke the law. And you may be asking, well, what does the government have to say about how a private organization spends its money? It's because it's a tax-exempt nonprofit, and it's by law, it must spend money reasonably. It can't just hand out bonuses and travel perks to its employees. And what the AG says happened here is that Wayne Lapierre and others abused the finances of this organization to take, for example, luxury trips, for example, 8 times to the Bahamas with him and his family over 3 years at a cost of $500,000, a $40,000 shopping trip at the Zegna boutique in LA because he was billing his suits to the organization. So things like that, contracts, alleged kickbacks. What they're saying is that Lapierre and his lieutenants abused the nonprofit laws. The AG initially wanted to dissolve the NRA. A judge has forbidden her from doing that, so she's trying to recover money, which will ultimately go back to the NRA itself, but she's also trying to effect some leadership changes within the organization. Again, a much diminished organization, but still nonetheless an important and powerful political group. Hallie.
Can I ask you, because there's another defendant in this case, Joshua Powell, former chief of staff, executive director of general operations. There was a settlement between him and the AG's office this weekend in which he apparently admitted to claims of wrongdoing. He's paying a fine. Put on your, legal analyst hat for a second here. How does that, if at all, affect the case against Lapierre? If somebody else in the organization is now settling, acknowledging apparently wrongdoing, is there an impact?
Well, of course, and we're all familiar with this in the criminal context. This is, of course, a civil case, but in the criminal context, prosecutors flip witnesses all the time, flip defendants, and get them to testify against the bigger fish. That looks like what's happening here. Powell settled for a small sum in the scheme of things of $100,000, and now they have his cooperation. And it's important to have. They have a lot of other insiders coming to testify too, but the more the merrier, because they have a lot of documents, but it's important to have people come before the jury and explain what those documents mean. Hallie.
Kendelanian live for us on all of those pieces as well. Ken, thank you very much. House Republicans are recommending that the president's son be held in contempt of Congress. That's after Hunter Biden, remember, defied a subpoena from the Judiciary and Oversight Committees, ordering him to show up for a closed-door interview earlier this month as part of the impeachment inquiry against his dad, the president. Hunter Biden's legal team argued he would only participate if the interview was done in a public setting, not behind closed doors. Number 2, the Supreme Court is letting California's ban on flavored cigarettes stay in place. They decided not to hear a challenge from tobacco companies and stores. California is the second state to ban all flavored tobacco sales after Massachusetts. Number 3, the Red Cross says there's a blood shortage, an emergency blood shortage, saying they haven't seen this few blood donors in this country in 20 years. They say that could be a real problem for life-saving medical care all across the country. Why? Why is this happening? Well, one reason that the American Red Cross gives, more people working from home, not going into the office. So the Red Cross says it's getting harder to meet people where they are now for blood drives. Number 4, office vacancies, speaking of work from home, hitting a new record, according to some new data from Moody's Analytics. Nearly 20% of all the office space in big cities is empty. That's the most we've seen in 40 years. Obviously, more people work in hybrid or work in remote. There's also overbuilding that Moody's says is a factor, too. Number 5, a mission to put the first American robotic lander on the moon in more than 50 years got into some big trouble today. The private aerospace company Astrobiotic Technology says the propulsion system failed. They have lost contact with the lander. They don't think they can actually safely land it on the moon anymore. They're trying to figure out how to salvage the mission, or at least try to. Coming up here on the show, the judge overseeing former President Trump's federal election interference case appears to be the victim of a swatting attack. New details that we're learning about that coming up in just a minute. Plus, firefighters saving a woman who'd been trapped in her car for days after she fell off a cliff in California. And guess what? The whole thing caught on camera. We're going to show it to you in a sec. We're just finding out tonight that the federal judge overseeing former President Trump's federal election interference case appears to be the victim of a swatting attack. Apparently, police responded to a call, this was last night, about the shooting, allegedly, at the home of the judge, Tanya Chutkan. Wasn't true. That was a false report, according to what 2 law enforcement sources are telling NBC News. A spokesperson for the U.S. District Court did not respond to our request for comment. Chutkan, remember, if you've heard her name, if you see her picture and she's familiar, well, she should be. She's overseeing the case that the special counsel, Jack Smith, has brought against former President Trump, alleging he tried to illegally overturn the 2020 election with his election fraud lies. This is not even the first time that Judge Chutkan has been the target of harassment over all of this. I want to bring in Ryan Riley for more. Help us understand what we know happened and then the broader context of this as it relates to the potential for threats, security issues on a judge who's overseeing one of the highest profile cases in the country.
Yeah, this is sadly something that's pretty predictable these days. And, just a few years ago, we had that attack at a federal judge's home that actually ended up killing her son in New Jersey. So it's something that the U.S. Marshals are obviously aware of. And I think that, they do the best that they can often to try to get the addresses of prominent public figures, especially someone like Judge Shukin, who has been so attacked by Donald Trump off the internet. But, it's really tough to get all of these public records. After this sort of happened, I went about myself trying to figure out if I would be able to find that address. And they had locked it down pretty well. But unfortunately, there's ways that there's some certain websites that this sort of slips through on. So this becomes an ongoing threat that they really just have to deal with. She's going to be facing a lot of these threats going forward as you continue to see this ire focused on her by the former president's supporters.
You mentioned, is there anything that, we've seen in other instances, the idea of, for example, like a gag order be put in place where the former president isn't able to talk about staff members, et cetera, et cetera. Is that something that comes into play in an instance like this?
So there is a gag order against the staffers, but not her directly, because Donald Trump obviously should have the First Amendment right to criticize a judge like this. But, this becomes really tricky, obviously, because of the way that his supporters react to statements like this. So it's obviously is a really tricky thing for law enforcement to deal with. And, you need a lot of coordination between these law enforcement agencies to make sure that something like this doesn't happen.
We also don't know, right, any details about the swatting incident other than what you've laid out as far as anybody who did it, et cetera, right?
We do know that Judge Shukin was home during the incident, but we don't have there's no suspect at this point.
Ryan Riley, thank you very much for that late-breaking update for us tonight. I appreciate it. NBC News covers hundreds of other stories every day, and because it can be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. Out of our Midwest Bureau, Michigan State University is opening a building for classes today for the first time since a deadly mass shooting there. 2 students were shot and killed at MSU's Berkey Hall about a year ago. You can see it there. The rooms where any violence happened are still closed off. Out of our Western Bureau, firefighters rescued a woman trapped for 4 nights in freezing weather after her car dropped something like 200 feet off a cliff in California. Take a look. If you're not looking, like you should, because it's just wild that this was all on video here. The first responders ended up airlifting her to safety from a mountain near LA. So think about this. Not only did she survive this fall, she survived that. She then survived all that time in conditions that were incredibly cold. It's just amazing to see the rescue. Down south, out of our Southern Bureau, a community in Jacksonville, Florida, coming together to donate Legos to a cancer charity after thieves stole $45,000 worth of Legos from their warehouse. People dropped off hundreds of pounds of Legos to the nonprofit V for Victory, which gives toys to children fighting cancer. That is, listen, nice to see. They shouldn't have had to even do it in the first place. Coming up. Listen, we keep talking about the Iowa caucuses, which are just about a week away, just exactly a week away. What is it? Why are the rules kind of confusing? We're going to try to make sense of it in tonight's breakdown after 2 live reports from the field. That's next. Right now, freezing weather is starting to get in the way, at least a little bit, of some of the Republicans campaigning in Iowa. 1 week from caucus today with a snowstorm. Look at this in Sioux City that forced Nikki Haley to cancel one of her events this morning. But you know who's not so worried about it? Former President Trump. That's because he's got a fairly light schedule there compared to his rivals. And when you look at it, listen, he's way ahead. He's above 50%, according to polling there, with the battle for second, where some of the interesting dynamics are between Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley. At the same time, it's a split screen because President Biden is also on the campaign trail, someplace far warmer, South Carolina, trying to win back the support of more black voters there and taking some direct shots at former President Trump. Listen.
There's some in this country trying to turn a loss into a lie which, if allowed to live, will once again bring terrible damage to this country. Losers are taught to concede when they lose. And he's a loser.
We've got team coverage now on all of it as campaign season 2024 is kicking off in a big way. Vaughn Hilliard is in Iowa, but we'll begin with Gabe Gutierrez, who's live for us on the ground in South Carolina, traveling with the president in Charleston. So, Gabe, we talked about it. President Biden is there. He's at this church today. He has been struggling with black voters, which has been such a key demographic for him. Tell me what you're hearing, and not just from voters, but to sources you're talking to.
Well, Hallie, as you know, it's a critical constituency, and it was Joe Biden that here in South Carolina during the 2020 campaign, Jim Clyburn's endorsement catapulted him to a victory here and eventually to the nomination. So black voters is a huge part of his coalition, and his campaign realizes that. Now, as you mentioned, President Biden has been slipping in the polls when it comes to black voters. Up around 20% of black voters or so in several recent polls say that they would consider voting for President Trump. But that's incredible. That's incredible when you think that former President Trump carried just 8% of the black vote back in 2020. Now, we have been speaking to voters here. Some of them are skeptical about the Biden administration. They view it as a lot of broken promises, they say, and they wish the president would have done more on such things as police reform, for example. But the Biden campaign insists that it has taken action. Now, the president here today trying to establish a link between white supremacy and the sins of the past in this country to the current divisions in this country. Hallie, as you know, Mother Emanuel AME Church, the site of where 9 black parishioners were massacred during Bible study. The president here today got a friendly reception from this crowd, and let's take a listen to some of what he had to say.
The word of God was pierced by bullets and hate, and rage, propelled by not just gunpowder, but by a poison that's for too long haunted this nation. What is that poison? White supremacy.
And at one point, Hallie, though, his speech was briefly interrupted by protesters calling for a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war, yet another sign of the deep divisions within the Democratic Party right now.
One of the things that we heard, Gabe, and one of the ways that, as you know, the campaign is looking to frame what they think is likely to be the race, which is Joe Biden versus Donald Trump again, is around this concept of the threat to democracy, of democratic norms. I'm talking like small d democratic norms here. This is a message we've heard again and again. From the folks that you're talking to, voters, does that seem to be resonating?
Well, Hallie, you know, some of the voters we spoke with don't think that it will resonate. But as you said, the Biden campaign is insistent that this is a key message heading into 2024. He's been speaking about it for months in Arizona a few months ago. Last Friday near Valley Forge, the Biden campaign is putting a lot of muscle behind that message, and they think it will end up resonating with voters, especially when more of them tune in throughout the year. Hallie?
Yeah. Charleston, South Carolina. Gabe Gutierrez, thank you for being there. Let's get to Vaughn Hilliard, who is live for us in Iowa. I'm always hesitant to say where, Vaughn, because you go to 60 towns in 60 days. It feels like Urbandale it is tonight. Talk us through. Listen, there's an interesting dynamic tonight. It's snowing where you are. Thank you for being out in the cold. I'm so sorry. It's always cold in Iowa on caucus night. It's going to be monster cold in Iowa on caucus night, and you've got that potentially playing into the way that candidates, even today, are talking about next week. Hit on that for us and what you're seeing from former President Trump, because he is not there tonight, not because it's cold, but because his political calendar collides with his legal calendar. We're showing it here in a big way.
How about this, Hallie? This is the best weather that Iowans are going to see through the caucus. On next Monday night at 7 p.m., when doors open for the caucus, the wind chill right now is slated to be -9 degrees. So that's the direction we're heading. And let's look at Donald Trump's schedule here. It's frankly a slow walk for him. You see where he is in the polls, and his campaign has made the calculus that he doesn't need to be here. Outside of a Fox News town hall on Wednesday night, he has no campaign rallies until this weekend. Instead, he's choosing to go to a court proceeding in Washington, D.C. Tomorrow. And then on Thursday, he's going to be going to closing arguments in that civil fraud trial in New York City. And if you look at Donald Trump over the last year, compared to Ron DeSantis, 34 events compared to Ron DeSantis' more than 160 events in the state. And just in the last month alone, Donald Trump's only been here for 5 events, or 5 days, I should say. That's not ordinary for a major presidential candidate, but Donald Trump is no ordinary presidential candidate.
Listen, the people who are in the race for second here at the moment, according to polls, it's Ron DeSantis, it's Nikki Haley. They have been, to a degree, of course, more than Donald Trump, out on the trail. DeSantis is down doing some governor stuff down in Florida at the moment ahead of his State of the State. But talk us through those dynamics in which you hear, because the thing about Iowa, and we're going to get to this in a second, it can be a momentum booster, even if it is not like a deciding factor for who ends up in the White House, to at least get somebody a breath of, fresh mo heading into New Hampshire. Talk us through what you're hearing on that front.
It provides them legitimacy. And for Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley, they're tussling for second place. And right now, Nikki Haley's in a clear second place in New Hampshire. That's why Ron DeSantis, he really needs to finish in second here to continue on. I want to let you listen to Ron DeSantis answer the question of if he doesn't come in first or second, will he stay in? Take a listen.
If you do not place first or second place, are you staying in this race?
We're in it for the long haul.
In it for the long haul, regardless.
Absolutely.
And the name that folks shouldn't forget is Vivek Ramaswamy, who has been going county to county here. And Vivek Ramaswamy right now, fourth in polling. But if he were to come in a third or a second place here, it would be quite startling and would really throw this race into chaos for that race for second, as you said.
Vaughn Hilliard live for us in Urbandale, Iowa tonight. Vaughn, thank you. He has covered multiple Iowa caucuses, at least a couple of them. You may have covered none. You may be going, what even is the caucus? I don't get it. Why do they call it a caucus? How do they even work? Well, we break it down in our breakdown.
It's a tradition we've watched for about half a century.
Uncommitted. Come on, Jackson. Jackson people, right in here.
Iowa, like it has since the 70s.
Yesterday, about 50,000 Democrats in Iowa met in caucuses.
What happens here tonight is a little unusual.
Today, it's all about making sure people know where they're going to caucus.
Leading the nominating process for Republicans.
Hello, Iowa. You're going to win this election for us.
So what actually is a caucus? Well, let's start with what it's not. It's not a primary. It's a closed-door meeting. And this year in Iowa, those meetings will happen in places like church basements, school cafeterias, and community centers in more than 1,600 precincts across 99 counties. The caucuses only involve people in the same party.
I pledge allegiance.
Here's how it's going to go down inside the room for Republicans next week. Attendees will pick a chair, and that chair will invite somebody to speak on behalf of each candidate.
Senator Ted Cruz from Texas is the best choice for president.
Some candidates will even hit up a caucus site themselves to deliver a last-ditch pitch.
Grow the economy at a far faster rate.
Then folks will write down the candidate they pick and turn it in. That all gets counted leading up to the big moment, the announcement of a winner.
First place, we had Governor Mitt Romney with 274 votes.
For Democrats, it'll look different from Republicans and different from how Dems have done it before. Their caucuses next week will be about party business, not about a primary pick for president, with Joe Biden, of course, running for re-election. The changes coming after the caucus debacle in 2020.
What went wrong in Iowa and why 100% of those caucus results still are not in?
Obviously, it's a mess.
A tech meltdown delaying results.
And the winner is, we have no idea.
This year, Democrats will vote by mail in Iowa, with the results set to be announced in a couple months. The first primary votes for the party instead will happen in South Carolina and Nevada next month.
And the DNC made that change to focus on states with a more diverse electorate. Republicans, of course, sticking with OG Iowa, then New Hampshire here. So if you're like, okay, well, does Iowa matter? Let's look at it by the numbers. Since 1976, only 3 contested Iowa caucus winners have gone on to win the White House. Former President Carter, former President George W. Bush, former President Barack Obama. So, no, not always a bellwether, right? They can help winnow down a big field sometimes. And as you heard us talk about with Vaughn, there is a momentum factor, too. We'll get to see it for ourselves live on the ground. I will be there next week, next Monday night, for our coverage of the caucuses. I have my hand warmers. Please send more if you got them for that -9, -9 wind chill. It's going to be fun. Got a lot more to get to here on the show tonight, at least, with some breaking news out of Texas right now. I want to show you an aerial shot. This is Fort Worth. We are just learning here. Look at this. There's possibly a major gas explosion at a building that may be, we're still working on some details here, maybe a hotel. You can see that is debris all over the street. We've got a team out gathering more information on this. We're going to have it for you as soon as we get more. Stay with us. We're going to be right back with this breaking news. That does it for us for this hour. We've got more coverage picking up right now. We are coming on the air tonight with investigators getting their hands on a key piece of evidence that could help explain why that Boeing plane got a hole blown in it midair. Tonight, the new big clue on what could have happened, how to make sure it never happens again, and what it means for some of the country's biggest airlines, with new moves on that front late today. Dan, we've got some breaking news coming into us in just the last hour. Texas police and firefighters responding to what looks like maybe an explosion at a hotel in Fort Worth. We're going to tell you what we're finding out about what happened. Plus, also in Texas, tornadoes touching down with the storm now heading toward Alabama, where our reporting team is. They're going to tell us how folks are getting ready there. Plus, we've got the full forecast on what you can expect with nearly everybody in this country affected. And the Pope calling for a global ban on surrogacy. We'll explain why in just a minute. Hey there, I'm Hallie. And tonight, in just the last couple of hours, United Airlines says it found loose bolts on multiple door plugs of Boeing 737 MAX 9 planes. Why is that so significant? It's because the video that you're seeing here, remember, it's a door plug that blew off this Alaska Airlines flight on Friday, midair, like 10 minutes after taking off from Portland. Now, all of these kinds of planes are getting inspected before they can go back in the air. And you've got a key piece of evidence that investigators have now recovered. It's that. Do you see that like little white thing in between the trees there? That's the door plug. Those are NTSB investigators in this picture. They've recovered it. They found this piece of the plane in the backyard of a school teacher named Bob. That's all they're saying so far. That's all we know about that. So some big questions tonight and no answers yet, including, importantly, this whole loose bolts thing. Could that issue be the answer to the mystery of why this door plug blew off the side of the plane? Another question, why wasn't that Alaska Airlines plane inspected earlier after apparently multiple warning lights went off because of air pressurization issues? Maybe those warning lights were unrelated to the door plug issue. Maybe not, TBD. And then there's this other bigger and broader questions. Is what happened on this particular Alaska flight part of a bigger issue with this kind of plane, the Boeing 737 MAX 9? That last question is what is affecting travel on a bigger level after the FAA grounded all of the MAX 9s until airlines inspect them starting today. Something like, as we speak tonight, 233 United flights are canceled. For Alaska, it's more than 150 at this hour. And you can see the airlines that are getting, the airports hit hardest. Unsurprisingly, it's places where you see a lot of United and Alaska flights. Seattle, Denver, Chicago, Newark. Both airlines say that people who have tickets on flights that are affected will be rerouted. I want to bring in Tom Costello, who's joining us now. Okay, so Tom, let's start with these loose bolts, right? How big of a deal is this if we're seeing multiple planes with this issue?
It could be. And, oh, by the way, it is important to stress that only Alaska and United fly the MAX 9. So that's why we're only hearing from them. But United is saying that when they did a preliminary look at their door plugs on Saturday, they started seeing loose bolts. The formal work that the FAA is requiring from both Alaska and United to fully inspect their door plugs for any issues, that hasn't even started yet. Should start today.
There was this question we mentioned at the top there about some of those depressurization alerts on this Alaska Airlines flight. It wasn't able to actually fly over water. So then I think people might think, okay, well, then how is it allowed to fly over land? How should we be thinking about those alerts? Could it be related? Could it not? Help us understand it.
I think this is a critical question. I've asked the NTSB chair this question. It's going to come up again this evening during her news conference. What we know is that this same plane, pilots who have flown the same plane, and by the way, it was a new plane, right? They only got it like on Halloween Day. That same plane, 3 previous crews had these warnings go off in the cockpit of pressurization issues, 3 separate occasions, once in December, twice in January. And that was before then Friday night's very serious incident over Portland. And so the NTSB is asking more information from Alaska Air. Alaska says its answer was to restrict the plane, no flying over water, no going to Hawaii until they track down those warning lights to find out if that was something serious or not. In the meantime, something else, Hallie, that is that the cockpit voice recorder, which is one of the black boxes, was recorded over. In other words, there's only a 2-hour recording loop on that black box. And if you don't pull the circuit breaker to stop the recording, it will keep recording over. Therefore, they don't have the recording of what these pilots were saying to each other, capturing all the sound in the cockpit when this emergency was happening. The NTSB chief addressed that earlier in a news conference.
If that communication is not recorded, that is unfortunately a loss for us, and a loss for FAA, and a loss for safety, because that information is key, not just for our investigation, but for improving aviation safety.
Yeah, that black box records not the radio comms, but the communication, the talk between the pilots, and then capturing all the sound, the ambient sound in that cockpit, the air rushing, the computers dinging, all the warnings going off. They don't have it.
There's also this now kind of key piece of evidence that they picked up. I mean, imagine you're sitting at home and you're a teacher, and then all of a sudden in your backyard, here comes a piece of a plane that has fallen out of the sky. I mean, that's what happened to somebody in the Oregon area here. That's a critical thing that they now have their hands on. Talk to us about what that investigation looks like, how important that is, this inspection process that's happening, as you've alluded to here. As we show, I know we have some more of those pictures, too, of the NTSB investigators that were just getting into us, getting a look at that door plug. That door is already on its way to the NTSB lab here in Washington. They will look at every centimeter of that door, the door plug, I should say, for any signs of stress, the bolts, all of the pins. They want to know why did that fail. Yeah. Any sense that you're getting from the sources you're talking to, Tom, on timeline for something like this story that's captured just so many people around the country thinking, I think it's changed in the last few minutes, Hallie. I really do. I mean, we have thought that maybe this is a one-off, just one incident involving this single plane. But now with United reporting loose bolts, we thought maybe this would extend for a few days and then they'd clear all the planes to fly. And now I'm not so sure. We may now have a bigger, broader, deeper problem with the MAX 9. The question is, you know, what about the Boeing culture that seems to keep having issues? That's far bigger than just this one plane. For people set to travel on either of these airlines anytime soon, how should they be thinking about this? Are there other planes that these airlines have in stock that they can kind of launch here, and if they're not going to fly the MAX 9s? Yes, so both United and Alaska are trying to fill the flights they've canceled because they can't use the MAX 9. They're using other planes, right? Not all 737s are the same. The MAX 9 is all we're talking about here. We're not talking about the MAX 7, the MAX 8, Airbus planes, etc. They will try to use those planes as much as possible. They're not going to fly the MAX 9. That plane is grounded right now by the FAA. Tom Costello, we're so glad to have you on this story that just continues to unfold almost hour by hour. Thank you so much. We want to get to some news just breaking into us now out of Texas, because fire officials there in Fort Worth say 11 people have been hurt in what they're investigating as an explosion after a gas leak. Look at some of this. I mean, this is, you know, debris on the street, pieces of windows blown out, glass on the ground, too. I want to bring in one of our reporters who's covering this, Marissa Parra. Marissa, what else do we know? I know the details are scarce at this hour, but it looks pretty scary.
Details are certainly scarce and just starting to trickle in, Hallie. We do have a crew, by the way, that's on the way. So I'm currently filling in from Mobile, Alabama, with what we're hearing from a press conference that's actually happening as we speak with the local fire department. So what we've been able to piece together in the last 15 minutes or so is a local councilman is saying that there was a gas leak and then an explosion. We know, according to the local fire department, there were 11 people that have been injured that we know of so far, and 9 of them hospitalized. We understand that one person among them is in critical condition. There are 2 serious injuries. We also know that there are firefighters going inside of the building as we speak, looking for survivors, looking for anyone who might be trapped, may be in need of medical attention or worse. And so we're just getting these images coming in. You can see smoke billowing through this streets from this hotel. We know that there's parts of the building's facade strewn about the streets. And so there's a lot of questions here, of course, Hallie, that are going to need answering. And of course, we have lots of questions, but certainly a very scary situation. But as of right now, no fatalities have been reported, according to the local fire department. Hallie.
Marissa Parra, thank you so much for that report, as we are looking to find out more as that crew gets there and gets us more information. Appreciate it. It's a busy night in Texas because there is also a confirmed tornado apparently touching down in the southeast part of that state, with officials putting in place tornado watches there, in some other spots down south, too. And even if you're not down south, almost all of us, people in 40 states, are revving up for what forecasters describe as ferocious blizzard conditions. Some kind of an issue through at least tomorrow. You've got a lot of governors already declaring states of emergency at this point. Some delays at airports. You've got flights grounded, some schools closed. You can see a messy mix on the road. And even on the heels of this, more problems because of a potential for flash flooding. Meteorologist Bill Cairns is tracking this. And Bill, let me start with those tornadoes in Texas. What do we know?
Tornado watches are up currently. We've had one confirmed tornado. Let's start with the watches first. So a watch means it's like the ingredients to a cake. The ingredients are favorable to have tornadoes forming in this area that goes from Biloxi to New Orleans all the way back to Houston. And we'll likely have tornado watches issued for a good portion of the next 24 to 36 hours, all the way through the coastline of South Carolina. So we only had one confirmed tornado report. You can see the icon right here that was just north of Houston. Storm spotter saw it, but it didn't do any significant damage, so that was great. Talking about areas of concern right now, in Houston, of course, the national championship college football game being played, Washington, Michigan. It's indoors in the Dome in Houston, but severe, just very strong thunderstorms right over the top. We're only about an hour and a half from kickoff, so you can imagine all the fans that were tailgating and everything. Everyone's ducking in their cars or trying to get into the stadium to stay dry. New Orleans, you were spared from this thunderstorm. It's now over Lake Pontchartrain. Look at all these little dots, these yellow flashes here. These are all lightning strikes. What a lightning show with that. That's going to be up here on Interstate 59 in the Mississippi. We're going to pick you in here shortly. So that's the severe side of this. This storm has so many different angles to it. The severe side, obviously, a tornado can take lives, disrupt property. Flash flooding and flooding kills more people in this country than anything else. And this is going to be a huge story later tonight for the New Orleans, Mississippi area, possibly the mountains of North Georgia, the South Carolina, North Carolina. And then from Washington, D.C. to New York City, Tuesday night into the overnight hours, excessive flooding is likely. I mean, possibly even worse than the last time about a month ago. And then the high winds, Hallie, are also going to cause, as you mentioned, can you imagine the airport delays with wind gusts like this throughout the entire eastern half of the country the next 2 days? And Hallie, guess what we get to do again? There's another storm just as strong as this one right behind this for the end of this week.
Yikes. It's brutal, Bill, especially when you think about the number of people who could end up losing power, the number of people who could end up impacted by this. I mean, you warned us last week that this was going to be the monster that we needed to watch out for, and here we are.
Yeah, and the snow I didn't even get a chance to talk about the snow portion of this and the power outages, but, we're likely going to see the blizzard conditions and people unable to travel from areas out west here. These are the blizzard warnings. And then even in Kansas City, you were expecting maybe 3 to 6. We may get you up to about 10 inches of snow, which is a big deal in the Kansas City area, especially when the winds are blowing and the snow's all over the place. And this will go right through areas of Iowa into Wisconsin. And then this is the storm behind it, Hallie. And that storm looks just as big. And the difference with storm number 2 is behind it is an Arctic blast, the coldest air of the winter season. So if you lose power behind storm number 2, that's going to be difficult.
Lots of people, of course, bracing for all of it. Bill Cairns, thank you very much. Appreciate it. So listen, we've got some new details coming into us tonight from the Pentagon here, which is looking into whether anybody broke any laws after the defense secretary and senior leaders there waited 3 days to tell the White House that Lloyd Austin was in the ICU. In the last couple of minutes, we're getting more information here that Secretary Austin is still in the hospital. The Pentagon press secretary says he's still experiencing discomfort. That's what they're saying, that he is still experiencing discomfort. But they say his prognosis is good. He was able to take multiple phone calls. He talked with the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan. He took a couple of operational updates, it sounds like. But they do not know when he is going to get out of the hospital. Again, this is coming into us literally in the last 10 minutes here, that there is no specific date from his release. They are committing to daily updates. How did this all start? What in the world happened here? Well, the Pentagon says the secretary went in for an elective procedure a couple days before Christmas. That was like in one day, out the next day. On New Year's Day, however, he had a lot of pain. He was taken by ambulance to the ICU at Walter Reed. His deputy secretaries took on some of his duties the next day. By the way, she was on vacation at the time. She didn't know why. She didn't even know her boss was in the hospital until January 4th. That's the same day the top White House officials found out. Courtney Kuby is joining us now. So today was supposed to be kind of maybe an answer day. Maybe we'd get some answers from the Pentagon on this, right? With some discussions on this. We do know that the Pentagon spokesperson says they're going to see were any laws broken because there is a reporting procedure that presumably needs to be followed here. Are the answers satisfying lawmakers, national security experts, and others who say this should totally not have happened?
So it really depends on who it is, right? So we've just moments ago heard from Senator Wicker, a Republican, saying there needs to be open hearings about this. Senator Cotton, Republican, calling on Secretary Austin to resign over this. So there are Republicans on the Hill who are definitely very critical. some Democrats haven't been quite as critical. But there's no question about at this point, Hallie, is yes, we have gotten some more answers today, but I got to say they're just opening up even more questions. So we saw the timeline that you put up on that screen. What we've learned even a little bit more since then was that on January 2nd, so the day after Secretary Austin was admitted to the hospital, his chief of staff and his senior military aide were both notified that he had been hospitalized. Now, that was also the day that, according to the press secretary here, Pat Ryder, Major General Pat Ryder, his condition worsened to the point where he had to give over or hand over some of his responsibilities and authorities to his deputy secretary, Kathleen Hicks. As you mentioned, she was not notified why. She was just told, you're taking over some of the boss's job here. She was on vacation at the time. She wasn't told until 48 hours later. But I got to say, now knowing that some of those senior officials here were notified on Tuesday, and yet it still took 48 more hours for them to notify the White House, really opens up more questions, including at what you mentioned, which is the reporting procedures here. Are there statutory requirements that require Pentagon leaders to notify the White House of the secretary's whereabouts and health at all times? And those are some of the questions that the general counsel's office here in the Pentagon are asking and looking into tonight, Hallie.
I believe that Pat Ryder, Court, was, based on your reporting, one of the people who was told on January 2nd, right?
Correct. He and the head of public affairs here.
Because he's somebody who has to take questions from people like you, who are trying to get some answers here. And it sounds like he wouldn't say whether he was told not to say anything when he first found out.
Yes, we don't know if there was actually some direction not to inform the public, the press, other officials here in the building. Critically, we found out today, Hallie, that the service secretaries, the Secretary of the Army, Secretary of the Navy, they weren't notified until Friday afternoon, right before that statement came out. Also, the members of the Joint Chiefs, they were not notified. The chairman was on Tuesday. The other chiefs were not until Friday. So, as I said, a lot more questions about who should have been telling people the status of the Secretary of Defense and whether any laws may have been broken in the way this all unfolded.
You know, I've been having some conversations with folks around this too, but just help put this in a macro, step back, right, 30,000 feet. Is this normal?
No, no, it's not. I've been covering secretaries of defense since Donald Rumsfeld, and I can tell you we have had other instances where a secretary has undergone a medical procedure. I mean, frankly, look at what we just had. We had the Commandant of the Marine Corps had a massive heart attack, came close to dying, frankly, and the Marine Corps was very transparent about the whole procedure. It's frankly the exact opposite of what we've encountered here.
For people who are saying, well, wait a second, shouldn't somebody be allowed to go have a medical procedure and keep it private? Explain why it's different when you're the defense secretary.
Yes, and he had this elective medical procedure. The difference here is he was sent to the ICU on Monday. He is in the military chain of command. He's in the nuclear chain of command. So that means that he's part of the president's very critical National Security Council or staff. If there is, heaven forbid, an attack on the United States, there are a group of people who get together on a phone call who decide on options. Sometimes they literally have minutes to make those decisions. He's one of those people. They need to know where he is and how to get in touch with them at a moment's notice all the time.
Courtney Kuby live for us there at the Pentagon. Court, thank you so much. A lot of developments on this, and we'll be checking back in with you throughout the evening. Appreciate it. A lot of developments on something else, too. Documents from a lawsuit related to the late sex offender, Jeffrey Epstein. This new round of documents just released includes photographs and an email provided by one of Epstein's alleged victims, a woman by the name of Sarah Ransom. Ransom provided dozens of photographs showing Epstein, his accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, and young women on Epstein's private island. And a 2016 email from Ransom to a New York Post reporter alleges that she had evidence of prominent men having sex with one of her friends and that it was recorded by Epstein at his New York townhouse. Ransom recanted that statement privately in 2016 and again in 2019 in a New Yorker article, saying she, I'm quoting here, invented the tapes to draw attention to Epstein's behavior. Unpack this for us. What's happening tonight in this latest set of documents and with these allegations made by Sarah Ransom back in 2016?
Right, Hallie. So we're up to about 2,500 pages total. Add another one to it because just in the moments that you were reading kind of our introduction here, the judge striking those photographs that you referenced never should have been released, she says. In some organizations have already published them. Of course, the concern is it could unwittingly identify potentially some victims of sexual abuse. So we have not shown those photos and won't be showing them during this segment. To the allegations, and we can actually read some of them. They're kind of two pillars of recommendation of allegations. The first is the idea that former President Bill Clinton Prince Andrew and Richard Branson apparently engaged in sex acts and sex at Jeffrey Epstein's townhouse in New York City, and that those sexual encounters were recorded. So that's allegation number one. The second kind of significant allegation is this one involving apparently the former President Donald Trump, that he was engaged in what were called regular occasions of sex with women, also at that same townhouse. And of course, you're looking here at some of the things contained within those emails. But in the same email chain, and this was an email to a New York Post reporter, she said, later said, "I've spoken to my family at some length this morning, and I would like to retract everything I have said to you and walk away from this." That's in 2016. Then, Hallie, in 2019, she says to the New Yorker that, and I'm reading from the New Yorker, Ransom told me that she had invented the tapes to draw attention to Epstein's behavior and to make him believe that she had evidence that would come out if he harmed me. Now we're looking at some of the denials from the individuals involved. They've all denied that they were involved in any of this behavior. Richard Branson putting out the statement noting that it was recanted. Donald Trump putting out a very strong statement saying that he never engaged in these acts. Also, statements in the past. You're looking at the statement there from Trump's spokesperson. Statements in the past from former President Bill Clinton denying any sort of recent contact over a decade or 10 or 15 years ago now with Jeffrey Epstein, which would, of course, encompass this period. And then, of course, Prince Andrew has steadfastly and very strongly denied any of this sexual conduct, Hallie.
Tom Winter with a lot going on there and a lot of developments tonight. Tom, thank you so much for being one of the tips of the spear on this reporting for us. Appreciate it. Let's take you overseas now, because President Biden late today says he is still asking Israel to scale back its invasion inside Gaza, responding to what was a moment of tension on the campaign trail. We're going to show it to you here. Pro-Palestinian demonstrators interrupting his speech in just the last couple hours. Watch.
I've been quietly working with the Israeli government to get them to reduce and significantly get out of Gaza.
The timing here, it is interesting. It is notable because a top Israeli military leader is now telling the New York Times that the military is starting to do exactly what President Biden just referenced there. Pull more troops out, do fewer airstrikes, try to do this more targeted approach, if you will. That's as the Secretary of State, you see him here, is on a high-stakes tour of the Middle East. He's in the region. And the Arab leaders Tony Blinken is meeting with are apparently giving him a new warning, saying that anti-U.S. sentiment is building, with people in those countries blaming the U.S. and Israel for the number of civilians killed in Gaza, according to multiple senior administration officials, diplomatic sources, and congressional officials. All of it as tensions are ratcheting up in the region tonight because a top commander of Hezbollah was just killed in a strike in southern Lebanon, with the Iranian-backed militant group saying the latest and one of the most significant escalations has happened between Hezbollah and Israel since the war started. I want to bring in Keir Simmons, who is on the ground for us live in Doha. Keir, give us the sort of 30,000-foot view from where you are, because there's a lot of moving pieces here tonight. There's what's happening on the northern border of Israel with Lebanon and Hezbollah. There's what's happening with what is apparently, according to what this IDF official is telling the Times, this more targeted campaign now happening inside Gaza, something that we know the Biden administration has been wanting for weeks now. And then there's this issue of what else we're talking about here. Secretary of State Tony Blinken trying to get some diplomacy happening. How do all these pieces connect? How are you thinking about it tonight?
Well, Hallie, Secretary Blinken is trying to do diplomacy. He just left the Gulf here and he's arriving in Israel. Let me give you something specific that tells us a lot. One of his proposals are that one Palestinian leadership should run both Gaza and the West Bank. But clearly the Americans and the Israelis think there shouldn't be Hamas. Hamas don't agree with that. And the Israelis don't think there should be one, particularly not the Palestinian Authority, one Palestinian leadership, not that they like anyway. So just that is an extraordinary challenge. And that gives you a picture. You mentioned the feeling around the world. I got a chance from here, Hallie, to talk to the French ambassador at the United Nations over there across the pond, who, of course, has a real picture of how the world feels. France has been calling for humanitarian help for civilians in Gaza, but he says they are also very, very worried about the spill-off, if you like, in northern Israel with Lebanon, in the Red Sea. Take a listen.
we are very concerned. Situation is deteriorating everywhere. Starting, by the way, with the West Bank, where the number of aggressions and acts of violence have increased even more in the recent weeks and months. The tensions in the north of Israel at the border of Lebanon is increasing. There are, the Hezbollah shooted rockets over the weekend, 62 rockets on Israel. Israel had these actions in Beirut, and yesterday or today, they killed the number 2 of Hezbollah in the area. So the situation can get out of control any minute.
So, Hallie, the French say they're ready to be involved in some kind of a push for peace. Secretary Blinken says he's got a coalition, if you like, of Turkey and some Arab states, including Qatar, Saudi Arabia, to agree to some kind of plan to rebuild for the day after. I've got to tell you, though, the diplomats I speak to in this region say they don't want to think about the day after until there is a ceasefire. And we will now find out in the days ahead how Secretary Blinken is received in Israel and what Israel thinks about all this. Don't hold your breath.
Keir Simmons, we're so glad to have you there for the analysis, the reporting, for all of it. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, House Republicans recommend that the president's son should be held in contempt of Congress. This is after Hunter Biden defied a subpoena from the Judiciary and Oversight Committees. Remember, they ordered him to show up for a closed-door interview earlier this month as part of their impeachment inquiry against his dad. But Hunter Biden's legal team said, hey, he'd participate, but only if the interview was done in a public setting, not behind closed doors. Number 2, the president of the National Association of Realtors says she's stepping down because of a blackmail threat. In a statement, the NAR said President Tracy Casper told leadership that somebody's threatening to disclose a past personal matter unless she resigns. She has apparently reported the threat to law enforcement. Casper did not immediately respond to CNBC's request for comment on this. Number 3, remember that Las Vegas judge attacked by a defendant in a courtroom last week? You have to remember that because that video is wild. I mean, he just straight up leaped over that bench. Finally, he has been sentenced. He is sentenced to up to 4 years in prison in an unrelated case. Remember, he leapt over the bench at his earlier sentencing hearing. Now, he still faces new additional charges for the whole courtroom leap incident. That hasn't been figured out yet. TBD on that. Number 4. The number of office vacancies in this country is at a new record, according to some new data from Moody's. 20% of all the office space in big cities is empty. It's the highest rate in 4 decades. Why? Well, you can guess. Are you working from the office today? Did you? A lot of people are working from home. They're hybrid, they're remote, whatever. There's also an issue, Moody says, of overbuilding, too. Number 5, a mission to put the first American robotic lander on the moon in more than 50 years is getting into some big trouble today. Private aerospace company Astrobiotic Technology says the propulsion system failed. They lost contact with the lander. They don't think they can safely land on the moon anymore. They're trying to figure out how to try to salvage things. Coming up here on this show, the Pope now calling for a universal ban on surrogacy. We're going to tell you why he's speaking now and the controversy that could come from this. The Pope is now calling for what he describes as a universal ban on surrogacy, saying in his words that it exploits both mother and child, and that it shouldn't be suppressed or turned into an object of trafficking. That's a quote from him. This all comes, of course, as a lot more people are turning to surrogacy to have children. Money spent on that is getting to something like $14 billion in 2022. It's expected to go up to $129 billion in the next 10 years as many people struggling with fertility turn to this. Ellison Barber is following all of this for us and is joining me now. What else do we know about what the Pope is saying and obviously, of course, the real-world implications that this could have on people?
Yeah, so Hallie, there are a couple ways to look at this. First, I'll start with kind of big picture. This is not a new position for Pope Francis or the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church and the Pope, he even said back in 2022 that he considered surrogacy to be inhuman. It is something that both the Pope and the Vatican, the Roman Catholic Church, have expressed their opposition to in previous comments in recent years and really for quite a while now. But what is unique about what we heard from him in this speech today is the context around it. One, he specifically said that he believes this is a practice that should be banned globally. And he said it at a speech where he was talking about issues, things that he considered to be threats to both peace and human dignity globally. He mentioned surrogacy in the same context where he talked about the threat war poses to humanity, the threat climate change poses to humanity. And he didn't just say that he believes it's wrong. He said it is despicable. Let me read to you some of his exact words that he used here. He said in part, quote, "I consider despicable the practice of so-called surrogate motherhood, which represents a grave violation of the dignity of the woman and child based on the exploitation of situations of the mother's material needs." This, I think, is surprising to some people, in part because we have seen the Pope support and take some steps in recent months that appeared to be more progressive to people watching from the outside, right? You think back a few months ago when this Pope said that he believed it was okay and he supported priests choosing to bless same-sex marriages. We also saw back in November of 2023, the Vatican update their doctrine where they specifically mentioned children born via surrogates, saying that a priest could choose, if they believe the parents really wanted to raise a child in the Catholic faith, that they could choose to baptize children of same-sex couples that were either adopted or conceived via surrogates. So to some people, this is raising a lot of alarm, a lot of questions about what it might mean moving forward and whether or not the Catholic Church is going to take an even more aggressive practice against something that is commonly used in the United States, though it is banned in a lot of European countries. Hallie.
Ellis and Barbara, thank you so much for that reporting. NBC News covers hundreds of other international stories every day. And because it can be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our teams around the world have done it for you. Here's some of what they're watching in a segment we call The Global. Out of Ukraine, some Russian missile attacks early today have reportedly killed at least 4 people and left dozens of others hurt. Missiles hit commercial sites, some residential areas. Ukrainian officials say they targeted civilians, even these strikes. In Ecuador, the country's so-called most wanted criminal is missing from prison. He's a convicted gang leader. He's been behind bars more than a decade. There's this big operation now to find him for obvious reasons. And oh, by the way, this is not the first time he's escaped. Last time it happened was in 2013. He was on the run for a few weeks. And in Slovenia, 5 people are free today after being trapped deep inside a flooded cave since Saturday. There was a ton of rain, which meant that the water levels in that cave rose and blocked the way out. Rescuers managed to get people food and water and a heated tent over the weekend. You see it here, they ended up getting them out by boat. Officials say everybody, fortunately, is doing okay. Coming up here on the show, we keep talking about the Iowa caucuses. They're happening, they're 1 week away. But like, what do you do at a caucus? Why is it called a caucus? Like, what is that all about? We've got some live reports. We're going to make sense of it next. Right now, freezing weather is starting to get in the way, at least a little bit, of some of the Republicans campaigning in Iowa. 1 week from caucus today with a snowstorm. Look at this in Sioux City that forced Nikki Haley to cancel one of her events this morning. But you know who's not so worried about it? Former President Trump. That's because he's got a fairly light schedule there compared to his rivals. And when you look at it, listen, he's way ahead. He's above 50%, according to polling there, with the battle for second, where some of the interesting dynamics are between Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley. At the same time, it's a split screen because President Biden is also on the campaign trail, someplace far warmer, South Carolina, trying to win back the support of more black voters there and taking some direct shots at former President Trump. Listen.
There's some in this country trying to turn a loss into a lie which, if allowed to live, will once again bring terrible damage to this country. Losers are taught to concede when they lose. And he's a loser.
We've got team coverage now on all of it as campaign season 2024 is kicking off in a big way. Vaughn Hilliard is in Iowa, but we'll begin with Gabe Gutierrez, who's live for us on the ground in South Carolina, traveling with the president in Charleston. So, Gabe, we talked about it. President Biden is there. He's at this church today. He has been struggling with black voters, which has been such a key demographic for him. Tell me what you're hearing, and not just from voters, but to sources you're talking to.
Well, Hallie, as you know, it's a critical constituency, and it was Joe Biden that here in South Carolina during the 2020 campaign. Jim Clyburn's endorsement catapulted him to a victory here and eventually to the nomination. So black voters is a huge part of his coalition, and his campaign realizes that. Now, as you mentioned, President Biden has been slipping in the polls when it comes to black voters. Up around 20% of black voters or so in several recent polls say that they would consider voting for President Trump. That's incredible. That's incredible when you think that former President Trump carried just 8% of the black vote back in 2020. Now, we have been speaking to voters here. Some of them are skeptical about the Biden administration. They view it as a lot of broken promises, they say, and they wish the president would have done more on such things as police reform, for example. But the Biden campaign insists that it has taken action. Now, the president here today trying to establish a link between white supremacy and the sins of the past in this country to the current divisions in this country. Hallie, as you know, Mother Emanuel AME Church, the site of where 9 black parishioners were massacred during Bible study. The president here today got a friendly reception from this crowd, and let's take a listen to some of what he had to say.
The word of God was pierced by bullets and hate, of rage, propelled by not just gunpowder, but by a poison. Poison that's for too long haunted this nation. What is that poison? White supremacy.
And at one point, Hallie, though, his speech was briefly interrupted by protesters calling for a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war, yet another sign of the deep divisions within the Democratic Party right now.
One of the things that we heard, Gabe, and one of the ways that, as you know, the campaign is looking to frame what they think is likely to be the race, which is Joe Biden versus Donald Trump again, is around this concept of the threat to democracy, of democratic norms. I'm talking like small d democratic norms here. This is a message we've heard again and again. From the folks that you're talking to, voters, does that seem to be resonating?
Well, Hallie, you know, some of the voters we spoke with don't think that it will resonate. But as you said, the Biden campaign is insistent that this is a key message heading into 2024. He's been speaking about it for months in Arizona a few months ago. Last Friday near Valley Forge, the Biden campaign is putting a lot of muscle behind that message. And they think it will end up resonating with voters, especially when more of them tune in throughout the year. Hallie?
Yeah. Charleston, South Carolina. Gabe Gutierrez, thank you for being there. Let's get to Vaughn Hilliard, who is live for us in Iowa. I'm always hesitant to say where, Vaughn, because you go to 60 towns in 60 days. It feels like Urbandale it is tonight. Talk us through. Listen, there's an interesting dynamic tonight. It's snowing where you are. Thank you for being out in the cold. I'm so sorry. It's always cold in Iowa on caucus night. It's going to be monster cold in Iowa on caucus night, and you've got that potentially playing into the way that candidates, even today, are talking about next week. Hit on that for us and what you're seeing from former President Trump, because he is not there tonight, not because it's cold, but because his political calendar collides with his legal calendar. We're showing it here in a big way.
How about this, Hallie? This is the best weather that Iowans are going to see through the caucus. On next Monday night at 7 p.m., when doors open for the caucus, the wind chill right now is slated to be -9 degrees. So that's the direction we're heading. And let's look at Donald Trump's schedule here. It's frankly a slow walk for him. You see where he is in the polls. And his campaign has made the calculus that he doesn't need to be here. Outside of a Fox News town hall on Wednesday night, he has no campaign rallies until this weekend. Instead, he's choosing to go to a court proceeding in Washington, D.C. Tomorrow. And then on Thursday, he's going to be going to closing arguments in that civil fraud trial in New York City. And if you look at Donald Trump over the last year, compared to Ron DeSantis, 34 events compared to Ron DeSantis' more than 160 events in the state. And just in the last month alone, Donald Trump's only been here for 5 events, or 5 days, I should say. That's not ordinary for a major presidential candidate, but Donald Trump is no ordinary presidential candidate.
Listen, the people who are in the race for second here at the moment, according to polls, it's Ron DeSantis, it's Nikki Haley. They have been, to a degree, of course, more than Donald Trump, out on the trail. DeSantis is down doing some governor work, governor stuff down in Florida at the moment ahead of his State of the State. But talk us through those dynamics in which you hear, because the thing about Iowa, and we're going to get to this in a second, it can be a momentum booster, even if it is not like a deciding factor for who ends up in the White House, to at least get somebody a breath of, fresh mo heading into New Hampshire. Talk us through what you're hearing on that front.
It provides them legitimacy. And for Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley, they're tossing for second place. And right now, Nikki Haley is in a clear second place in New Hampshire. That's why Ron DeSantis, he really needs to finish in second here to continue on. I want to let you listen to Ron DeSantis answer the question of if he doesn't come in first or second, will he stay in? Take a listen.
If you do not place first or second place, are you staying in this race?
We're in it for the long haul.
In it for the long haul, regardless.
Absolutely.
And the name that folks shouldn't forget is Vivek Ramaswamy, who has been going county to county here. And Vivek Ramaswamy right now, fourth in polling. But if he were to come in a third or a second place here, it would be quite startling and would really throw this race into chaos for that race for second, as you said.
Vaughn Hilliard live for us in Urbandale, Iowa tonight. Vaughn, thank you. He has covered multiple Iowa caucuses, at least a couple of them. You may have covered none. You may be going, what even is the caucus? I don't get it. Why do they call it a caucus? How do they even work? Well, we break it down in our breakdown.
It's a tradition we've watched for about half a century.
I'm committed. Come on, Jackson. Jackson people, right in here.
Iowa, like it has since the 70s.
Yesterday, about 50,000 Democrats in Iowa met in caucuses.
What happens here tonight is a little unusual.
Today, it's all about making sure people know where they're going to caucus.
Leading the nominating process for Republicans.
Hello, Iowa. You're going to win this election for us.
So what actually is a caucus? Well, let's start with what it's not. It's not a primary. It's a closed-door meeting. And this year in Iowa, those meetings will happen in places like church basements, school cafeterias, and community centers in more than 1,600 precincts across 99 counties. The caucuses only involve people in the same party.
I pledge allegiance to the flag.
Here's how it's going to go down inside the room for Republicans next week. Attendees will pick a chair, and that chair will invite somebody to speak on behalf of each candidate.
Senator Ted Cruz from Texas is the best choice for president.
Some candidates will even hit up a caucus site themselves to deliver a last-ditch pitch.
Grow the economy at a far faster rate.
Then folks will write down the candidate they pick and turn it in. That all gets counted leading up to the big moment, the announcement of a winner.
First place, we had Governor Mitt Romney with 274 votes.
For Democrats, it'll look different from Republicans and different from how Dems have done it before. Their caucuses next week will be about party business, not about a primary pick for president, with Joe Biden, of course, running for re-election. The changes coming after the caucus debacle in 2020.
What went wrong in Iowa and why 100% of those caucus results still are not in?
Obviously, it's a mess.
A tech meltdown delaying results.
And the winner is, we have no idea.
This year, Democrats will vote by mail in Iowa, with the results set to be announced in a couple months. The first primary votes for the party instead will happen in South Carolina and Nevada next month.
And the DNC made that change to focus on states with a more diverse electorate. Republicans, of course, sticking with OG Iowa, then New Hampshire here. So if you're like, okay, well, does Iowa matter? Let's look at it by the numbers. Since 1976, only 3 contested Iowa caucus winners have gone on to win the White House. Former President Carter, former President George W. Bush, former President Barack Obama. So, no, not always a bellwether, right? They can help winnow down a big field sometimes. And as you heard us talk about with Vaughn, there is a momentum factor, too. We'll get to see it for ourselves live on the ground. I will be there next week, next Monday night, for our coverage of the caucuses. I have my hand warmers. Please send more if you got them for that -9, -9 wind chill. It's going to be fun. Got a lot more to get to here on the show tonight, at least, with some breaking news out of Texas right now. I want to show you an aerial shot. This is Fort Worth. We are just learning here. Look at this. There's possibly a major gas explosion. You can see that is debris all over the street. Stay with us. We're going to be right back with this breaking news. That does it for us for this hour. We've got more coverage picking up right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.